Hello dear friends, you are on the Ruslan Bailov channel and this is the daily summary of combat operations from the Ukrainian front. So has the meeting between Putin and Trump ended before it even began? At least, that's how it looks right now. A White House representative stated that there will be no meeting between Putin and Trump in the near future. Lavrov and Rubio have already cancelled their meeting. They won't be seeing each other. Then Trump said, "No, I'll give my answer within 2 days. Maybe the meeting will still happen." But so far, everything suggests that it won't. The positions are completely opposite. The Americans demand a halt along the line of contact, while on the Russian side, both Lavrov, Peskov and Ryabkov have said clearly, there will be no halt along the front line, no ceasefire at all. The conditions are known, the withdrawal of the Ukrainian armed forces from the Donetsk region. But Zelensky refuses. That's the situation in short. The battles continue, and we continue to analyze the situation. So, my friends, it smelled like peace for a moment, and then quickly stopped smelling like it. You know, at the front, the guys don't pay attention to all this diplomacy. There, it's heavy daily work. They're pushing the front line forward. In particular, a favorable situation for the Russian army is developing in the Volchansk direction. Yesterday, footage appeared confirming the breakthrough of Russian assault units toward the village of Sinelnikovo. The footage shows Russian soldiers using incendiary munitions to strike Ukrainian positions on the northern outskirts of the village. What does reaching Sinelnikovo mean? As you can see on the map, this village lies southwest of Volchansk itself. If the Russian troops manage to develop this success and drive the Ukrainian armed forces out of Sinelnikovo, they will physically cut off the road that, until very recently, supplied the Ukrainian garrison in the southern part of Volchansk. As of now, Russian positions are about 1.5 kilometers from that road, and judging by everything, it will soon be physically cut off. And what's beyond that road? Behind it lies the small village of Tsegelnoye, and beyond that, the urban-type settlement of Vilcha. This is one of the main goals, because Vilcha is not just a settlement, but a well-fortified Ukrainian base, constantly used for troop accumulation and transfers into Volchansk itself. Overall, things are getting worse for the Ukrainian side here, and even Ukrainian sources admit it. In Volchansk itself, heavy urban battles continue, and if Russian troops take Sinelnikovo, they'll also take the western part of Volchansk, from where they can begin pressing toward the center of the city's southern section. On the eastern flank, there are no changes so far. After recently taking the village of Tikoye, there have been no major advances. As far as I know, the current focus is not on forcing the river and moving the fighting toward Volchanskia Khutora, but on clearing the forest belt in this area. That's probably the right choice. As long as Ukrainian forces remain in those forests, they can launch counterattacks on Tikoye and contest control of the settlement. To prevent that, and to ensure full control, those forest zones must be cleared. Moving on, I saw questions yesterday in the comments about the Sumy region. What's happening there? Nothing, seriously nothing, no changes. The Russian army has no advances, and the Ukrainian side doesn't either. Recently, the Ukrainian troops tried to retake the village of Alexievka. They even reached the center at one point, but Russian forces counterattacked and regained all lost positions. That's it. So over the past week, the front line there hasn't changed at all. However, on the Malovsky bridgehead, Russian forces managed to expand their control zone. In the area of the village of Belogorovka, they advanced about 400 meters and reached the northern outskirts of the settlement. You can see on the map that it's a small village, so I don't think Ukrainian troops can hold it for long. The main goal for the autumn campaign, as we've discussed before, is to straighten the front line toward Dvorochansk, capturing Belogorovka in the process. For now, there is visible movement in that direction. Now about Kupiansk. Yesterday, footage appeared from the city, particularly from the Yubileyny neighborhood, right here. The footage came from the Ukrainian side. They used drones to attack Russian positions in one of the apartment blocks. But you know, that kind of footage only confirms that Russian forces partially control that neighborhood. What's the overall situation in Kupiansk? On the 20th, Ukrainian forces tried to launch a counter-offensive. I told you about that in yesterday's report. Their attempt to unblock their trapped garrison in the center completely failed. Yesterday, they also tried to bring reinforcements from Kupiansk-Uzlovoy into the southern part of Kupiansk, but Russian drones caught them during the river crossing. Their armored vehicle was destroyed, and the transfer never happened. In short, there's no major dynamic movement here right now. Ukrainian forces are trying to bring in reserves and break the blockade, while Russian troops are focused on holding their positions, maintaining the blockade, and gradually expanding their zone of control. That's how it stands. Let's move further. On the Borovsk direction, after capturing Borovskaya Andreevka, everything is quiet, just as I said before. There won't be any breakthroughs toward Borovaya, despite what some analysts claim. That section is practically dead. It only shows signs of activity very rarely. But the Lyman area is quite dynamic. Yesterday, reports came from the ground that Russian troops entered the village of Stavki, and fighting is ongoing there. This is very, very important. There's no map update yet because confirmation videos haven't been published. And maps are only updated when visual evidence appears. That's the right approach. But believe me, the information is reliable. Battles are now taking place in Stavki, and that's the last village on the northern approaches to Lyman. This village marks the final defensive line protecting Lyman from the north. If the Russian army captures it, that defensive line will be completely broken. That's the current information. We're waiting for more reports from the front, and of course for new footage, which should appear soon. On the Seversk direction, the front has stabilized. No movement has been recorded in recent days. Regarding the Kostyantinivka sector, fierce battles are now unfolding for the village of Ivanopilia. It is also the last settlement on the approaches to Kostyantinivka. I don't have any additional information on that area for now. Now, the Dobropilia sector. On the 20th, a well-known military analyst, let's not name him, claimed that Russian troops had driven the Ukrainian armed forces out of the village of Shakov. Today is the 22nd, and I can state with full confidence that this is absolutely untrue. Heavy fighting continues in Shakov, and most of the village remains under Ukrainian control. As for Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad, yesterday Ukrainian sources were spreading so-called good news, claiming that they had completely cleared Pokrovsk of Russian troops, and that if any Russians were still there, they were only on the southern outskirts. Here, take a look at the screenshot. Frankly, such nonsense isn't even worth commenting on. They cleared the entire city, sure. Let's see in a couple of weeks who exactly got cleared out. In reality, Russian forces have captured the railway station, have nearly completed clearing all the southern high-rise districts, reached the central market area, and are now fighting for the bus terminal. Russian forces control the entire western part of Pokrovsk and have broken through across the railway tracks into the northern districts. Yet Ukrainian media claim they've almost liberated the entire city. Right. Just like they supposedly eliminated the Dobropilia salient back in August. Still, eliminated, I see. In short, lies remain their favorite pastime. And the more they deceive themselves, the harder the truth will hit once the reality of what's happening in Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad sets in. In the Mirnohrad area, Russian troops advanced northward from the direction of Mykolaiivka after heavy fighting, taking control of Promin and Luch. Between Moskovsky and Luch, several Ukrainian groups remain trapped in a nearly closed pocket, and Russian drone crews have begun hunting them down. Today, the settlement of Promin and the territory west of it officially came under Russian control. This has been confirmed even by Ukrainian footage. And finally, I want to show you a clear result of the breakthrough on the Orikhiv sector that occurred on the 20th. Yesterday, cartographers hadn't yet updated the map, but today they did. Here you can see the breakthrough extended 3 kilometers and 700 meters deep. Russian troops reached the center, landed infantry, and established positions. The key question now is whether they can hold and build on this success, because the Orikhiv front is extremely complex. Battles for Mala-Tokmachka have been raging for a very long time. To give you perspective, Russian troops have been on the approaches to Mala-Tokmachka since the year 2022. For 3 years, the front line in that area has remained virtually unchanged. If this breakthrough finally changes the configuration, it would be a major achievement. Well, that's all for today regarding the front line. Now let's briefly look at the political front. Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump have not named an exact date for their meeting. Serious preparation is required, the Kremlin stated. In Moscow, the reports about Putin possibly flying to Budapest on the same plane as Trump are viewed as fantasy, according to Dmitry Peskov. There is no understanding yet about the precise timing of a Putin-Trump summit. It's premature to discuss whether leaders of European Union countries will participate in the Russia-US summit in Hungary. The details of the meeting have not yet been discussed. European countries are currently encouraging the Kiev regime to continue the war. A difficult preparatory phase lies ahead before the Putin-Trump meeting, but the mood in the Kremlin is businesslike. It is too early to talk about the participation of any European countries in the upcoming Russia-US summit. The Kremlin also stated that publicly disclosing Russia's proposals before the talks, in megaphone mode, is impossible, as it would harm the negotiation process. Peskov also emphasized that NATO military exercises are always closely monitored by the Russian armed forces, with their scenarios and objectives thoroughly analyzed. Meanwhile, planning for the Putin-Trump summit in Budapest has been suspended. NBC News journalist Garrett Harke, citing a senior White House official, reported that President Trump believes both sides are not yet ready for negotiations that would justify further steps. Therefore, no meeting between Trump and Putin is planned in the near future, the White House confirmed. At this point, all officials, politicians, and media commentators are saying that Ukraine faces a full-scale blackout this year. It must be clearly understood that the responsibility for the energy collapse lies entirely with the authorities. Ukrenergo and the Agency for Infrastructure Restoration received 20 billion hryvnias from the budget, but due to corruption, substations are not protected by concrete blocks, sandbags, or anti-drone nets. All the money went into the insatiable appetites of Zelensky's team, reports the Telegram channel Legitimate. The Zelensky administration also miscalculated, believing it could prevent the destruction of its own energy infrastructure. The second issue is the Infrastructure War 3.0, initiated and continued by Zelensky himself, which deliberately provokes retaliatory Russian strikes on energy, gas, and fuel facilities. The third issue is a severe lack of funds to purchase electricity and gas. Western sponsors are in no hurry to cover these costs. This black winter will be the hardest one yet. Preparations should have been made long ago. People should not believe the government's reassurances. Prices have already surged, as everyone tries to profit from the suffering of ordinary citizens. Our source reports that Putin warned Trump, if Zelensky continues to escalate the infrastructure war and provoke attacks, Russia will seriously deploy its new weapon, which is already ready for use. Trump, in turn, conveyed this warning to Zelensky during their meeting, to which Zelensky smirked and said that Putin was bluffing. This irritated Trump deeply, as did Zelensky's lies about the situation on the front line. The entire meeting in Washington reportedly took place in a tense atmosphere and resembled a reprimand rather than a friendly discussion. Rumor has it that Zelensky fears the Budapest summit, believing it would symbolize Ukraine's conditional defeat. Trump reportedly intends to sign a peace framework there, one that has already been outlined to Zelensky. Meanwhile, Politico writes that the European Union is discussing the possibility of Ukraine's accession with limited rights. The proposal envisions admitting new members without granting them full voting rights, a measure intended to secure Hungary's consent to expansion. The idea is that new members would gain full rights only after the EU reforms its decision-making system, making it harder for single countries to veto key policies. The proposal is still at an early stage and must be approved by all current member states. It could also apply not only to Ukraine, but to Moldova and Montenegro as well. The same publication also reports that Belgium will not block the confiscation of Russian assets, but all responsibility for potential repercussions will fall on European taxpayers. Brussels has made it clear it won't oppose EU plans to use frozen Russian assets following pressure from other European governments. This decision opens the way for providing Ukraine with loans of up to 140 billion euros using Russian funds. However, if courts side with Russia and rule that Europe's use of these assets constitutes illegal confiscation, the burden of compensation will fall on EU taxpayers. Belgium also fears that investors from countries such as China might withdraw their funds from Euroclear out of concern that their assets could also be seized for political reasons. According to the Swiss newspaper NZZ, EU financial aid to Ukraine has dropped sharply to an average of €1,900 million per month. In the first half of the year, it was €3,800 million. With Donald Trump's inauguration as President of the United States, America has halted funding for the conflict in Ukraine. In the first half of the year, the European Union was still able to partially compensate for this shortfall, but now, the situation is much worse. In July, NATO launched the Pearl Initiative to allow member states to purchase weapons for Ukraine from the US, but the expected results never materialized. This isn't due to a lack of resources. Europe's overall capacity for support is far from exhausted. For context, Europe spent about €800 to €900 billion on combating the COVID-19 pandemic and around €400 billion during the Eurozone crisis. So far, total aid to Ukraine amounts to only about €215 billion, notes the Swiss outlet. That's all for today, my friends. Thank you for watching and staying with us until the end. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your thoughts in the comments, and share this video so more people can see what's really happening on the front lines. Take care of yourselves, and we'll meet again tomorrow with a new update from the battlefield. Stay tuned, it's going to be important.